I'm here today in the south of France with a Volkswagen ID.7, getting a first look at the company's all-electric mid-size sedan that's coming to the US in the second half of 2024. It's going to come available in a rear-wheel drive and also an all-wheel drive version. And when it launches, there's only going to be one battery pack option, the same pack that's in the ID.4 currently, the large pack, 77 kilowatt hour usable. However, about a year later, Volkswagen is going to introduce a larger battery pack, and that's 86 kilowatt hour usable. So that's going to give it a little bit of a range bump about a year later. Size-wise, the vehicle is about the same length as a Tesla Model S, just for comparison. However, it's about 4 inches taller than a Model S, so it gives you a little bit more headroom than you get in the Model S. The Model S is 4 inches wider, so there's a little bit more space width-wise. But as far as interior space, just sitting in the vehicle, it feels extremely spacious, both in the front and the back seats. Okay, so now let's hop in and take it for a drive and see how well Volkswagen's new top-of-the-line sedan drives. All right, so I'm behind the wheel of the ID.7. I'm here with Jordon Schaefer of Out of Spec. Say hi to the State of Charge.
Hello, State of Charge.
I'm sure you guys know Jordon because a lot of my followers follow Out of Spec, so we're kind of closely related.
A lot of ours follow State of Charge.
Yeah, so
with good reason.
You know, Kyle and I do the podcast together, and you know, we do a lot of collaborations, and Jordan's representing Out of Spec on the ID.7 drive because Kyle's at SEMA. So it's Jordon and I out here taking the ID.7 for a ride. Jordon has already driven. We actually did a video with Jordon driving, so check out the Out of Spec channel for Jordon's take on ID.7 and a little bit of my take too, which we're going to get some of Jordon's opinion here. So first impressions getting in the vehicle. It's extremely comfortable. This is definitely a grand tourer, as Volkswagen says it is. The seats are tremendously comfortable. They're heated and air conditioned standard, massaging standard, and there's like 11 or 12 different settings that you could set the massaging. If you just want lower lumbar, if you want your whole back, if you want your hips massaged. We were playing with it before. We were getting some massage on.
I'm actually going to turn mine on right now because now that you're talking about it, I kind of want it.
You even get to set the intensity and the type of massage you want, so it's really cool. It's a good system. And as I said, it's standard. You don't have to get like the top trim for it. There's a lot of standard features on the ID.7. It's only going to come in 2 different trims. Volkswagen hasn't given us the exact name of them, but it's probably going to be Pro and Pro S. But the base Pro has a lot of standard options, which is really good. Of course, we don't have pricing yet, so we don't know how good of a value it is with all of those options, but I have to believe that Volkswagen's going to be relatively aggressive with the pricing because they want to sell these. It's a very important vehicle for them. But driving-wise, it's actually exceeded my expectations. There's different driving modes, first of all. You've got your Eco, your Comfort, your Sport, and then you have an individual driving mode where you can tune it the way you want it. Now that's not that unusual. A lot of vehicles have that individual driving mode. But the ID.7 has the new dynamic chassis control system, and it really separates the driving experience for the different driving modes. And then you could even adjust it within the driving modes if you want it to be more comfortable or more stiff or sporty. And it really works. And why I say I'm surprised that it really works, not that I'm surprised that it works, I'm surprised at the varying range of comfort that you can get, and how even when it's in sporty mode, it's not that uncomfortable, it's not that stiff. And even when it's in comfort mode, it's not too squishy. So I have to give Volkswagen a lot of credit for that. The suspension is top-notch in this vehicle. Top-notch. I mean, it's up there, as far as I'm concerned, with some of the real expensive premium brands. Yeah. And that surprises me. Now, it's not a total upscale premium car, but there's definitely a premium feel to this. And comfort-wise and sound isolation-wise, it's up there with the best of them. Now, it's not as quiet as maybe an e-tron or Mercedes EQS, but it's definitely one of the quieter electric vehicles that I've driven. So Volkswagen's done a really good job with the sound isolation, and the comfort is top-notch. This is the type of vehicle that you would want to drive cross-country. Could you drive cross-country with it, though? That's the question. We're going to test out the charging characteristics soon. We're going to make a charging stop. Range-wise, we don't have EPA range ratings yet. This is still a little early on, but judging from the WLTP ratings, it's going to be with the standard battery pack, which is 77 kilowatt hour usable. It's going to be close to 300 miles. And then they're going to have an optional 86 kilowatt hour battery pack available about a year later, and that will be more than 300 miles. So range-wise, it should be fine for the road tripping. We'll see how well it charges, because obviously that's just as important as how far it can go, how quickly it can replenish the miles. Okay, we'll talk about software, which was, in my opinion, one of the biggest issues of the ID.4 when it first came out. The software was laggy, it was slow, it took forever to boot up. And that was Volkswagen ID.4 owner's biggest complaint that I noticed, at least online. I never owned one, but I drove one enough to know that the software really wasn't up to par with competing vehicles. Now, with the new software 4.0 that's in this vehicle, combined with a very large 15-inch touchscreen, so it's got a touchscreen the size of a Model 3 and Model Y, which is the largest touchscreen that Volkswagen has right now in their electric vehicles. It is snappy, it's crisp, it's bright, it's very quick. They, in my opinion, went 2 generations beyond what the original software in the ID.4 was. So this, I could live with this just fine. It's got a lot of different options. It's easy to figure out also. It's very intuitive. You've got a bar along the top with your choices, and along the bottom of the touchscreen has HVAC controls for your heating and cooling. Now the vehicle still has the capacitive buttons on the steering wheel and for the HVAC controls, but they're backlit now. The HVAC controls that weren't before, that was a big complaint. Volkswagen improved that. They haven't, however, improved or redesigned the window buttons. They still only have 2 power window buttons that you have to toggle in order to open the rear windows, which is universally disliked by, I think, every journalist and owner that has it. And from what Volkswagen seems to be telling us is they're working on that, and at some point in the future, that's going to be changed. I think they read the message loud and clear from the owners that they don't like the fact that they have to toggle through the buttons. Well, that's my initial driving impressions. This is comfortable. The suspension really works. The active damping is spot on. Jordon, you spent about an hour behind the wheel. What did you think about your driving impressions?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I agree, and they do a really good job for someone who hasn't switched to like an air suspension or some of those more super premium suspension. I would say this is still steel springs with active dampers, and like you said, they did a really good job at not going crazy aggressive, but within the range they've allowed you to adjust it. You have very fine adjustment, like something like 12 stops of adjustment, which is really great. They've of course improved the rear suspension over even other ID vehicles with new bushings, and so it just rides really quite well, better than I think a lot of other spring cars, especially, you know, after being in like a Model 3, for example. It's like, wow, this really does feel just proper and kind of floaty, but you can still tune it a bit more sporty if you want that. So this is the first time we're getting DCC, or dynamic chassis control, as an EV from Volkswagen in the States, which is about time, I'd say.
Well, it works, I can tell you that. And we've been playing around as we've been driving and switching between eco and comfort and sport mode, and you can feel the difference between the driving modes. A lot of times when you get in vehicles that have the different driving, you almost, like, you might feel a little tighter steering or whatever, but you don't feel that much difference in the suspension. You really feel it here, especially like you said with the different settings where you can go all the way one way or all the way the other way, you know, either total comfort or total sport. You really feel the different steps along the way. So I got to give Volkswagen a lot of credit for that. And power wise, so it has Volkswagen's new APP 550 rear motor. This is a rear wheel drive version. It's going to be offered in all-wheel drive also, but it has 220 kilowatt motor, and it goes 0 to 60 in about 6.5 seconds, which doesn't sound amazing in today's world of crazy fast and powerful electric vehicles, but honestly, it's more than enough for what this is, a family haul or family sedan. It's more than what you need. You still get that instant torque when you punch it. I mean, it still throws you back in the seat. I mean, we're in comfort mode, and you know, you could feel that. You know, sport mode's even faster. It really gives you that instant throwback. And as Jordan and I were talking about earlier, the 0 to 30, 0 to 40 is almost more important than 0 to 60. You want that instant burst when you need it.
And that's where the torque is. So it's 429 pound-feet of torque, 210 kilowatt in the rear, which is 282 horsepower. Yeah. And those are solid numbers for like a luxury, mid-luxury sedan. Like that's all you need. It's fantastic. And you don't have to chase the 1,000 horsepower plaid numbers necessarily, like some people maybe do. This is great for most things, like around town. We did highway polls. I mean, you tried like highway speed and then getting passing speed. It can still do it.
Absolutely. And we're so spoiled with electric vehicles today that, you know, if it goes less than 0 to 60 in less than 5 seconds, it's slow.
Yep.
That's ridiculous. I'm a little bit older than you. I remember in the 80s, like almost no cars went 0 to 60 in under 6 seconds. Yep. You know, you had to get a super high performance car. And this has more than enough power for what it is. Every vehicle doesn't have to challenge Model S Plaid. I think everybody just looks at that number. What's a 0 to 60? Oh, it's slow.
Yep.
And this is more than powerful enough. This video, as well as all of the videos here on State of Charge, is sponsored by Qmerit. Once I've helped you decide which electric vehicle charger you're going to buy, then follow the link in the description of my videos and have Qmerit install it. Oh, we got to turn right here. I wasn't paying attention.
Is it right on red allowed in here?
Well, I'm going to do it.
Just instantly.
So yeah, we've turned. We're on the course, pre-programmed course that Volkswagen has for us, and we turned off the navigation volume so we could record this video. And then when you do that, sometimes you miss turns because you're not paying attention. So it's up to you to watch this for me while I'm driving here.
But I will say they do have the ID light, as they call it, on the dash, which will blink one way or another.
Exactly.
Which we also missed.
To tell you, which of course I missed. And also standard is a head-up display.
Yeah.
All ID.7s are going to have a standard head-up display with augmented reality, which works really well. It also has a driver's display, a small driver's display that's integrated into the dashboard, but it has all your relevant information there. Your speed, the speed limit is posted. It has your battery state of charge numerically shown, not just bars. That drives me crazy when you don't get a numeric state of charge. Your remaining miles. It also shows you what your cruise control was set at, and it has your ADAS display on to show you what features you have on, and also the ambient temperature. So even though it's a small display, it packs a lot of relevant information there, and then you just look up a little higher and you have your head-up display. So I think that's a really good feature. And the augmented reality with the navigation system works really well.
Yeah.
You know, I think my favorite of that is BMW's implementation.
Yeah.
But this is pretty good also. So I definitely think that this is very useful. It's not dark out. I prefer really looking at the head-up display at nighttime because it's much more crisp. But so far, it seems like it's working really well, along with the ADAS. You know, the travel assist system. I was going to say pilot assist, but it's travel assist. I get confused with all the different names from all the companies. But the travel assist works really well. Jordan actually has used it more than I have. He drove the vehicle more than I have so far. It seemed like it worked really well. I like the lane change. To explain that a little bit, you were playing around with that a lot.
Yeah, on the highways, you know, it has an automatic lane change option, so you can press down the turn signal and it will, you know, I guess sense whether it is actually clear, because it does have the sensors to tell if someone's there. If no one's there, it gives you the green arrow and it says it's doing it in the augmented reality, so it shows you which lane it's going into. It works really well. It works fine, and I think it's a pretty good system. And it's funny, we complain about the capacitive buttons, but with Travel Assist, they use a capacitive steering wheel, which I think is the proper way, in my opinion, to sense whether you're actually there. The ones that require you to input torque to tell you that you're still there sometimes requires too much torque for me to even feel safe. I mean, sometimes you have to like really yank the wheel to be like, look, I'm still here. So I'm glad they do that capacitive wheel. It's I think the best way to do it.
Yeah. I agree. It absolutely worked really well. No complaints about that, although most of the time that we've used it so far, you were using it. And it definitely didn't seem to make any mistakes. And you were even testing it at secondary and tertiary roads around really winding bends.
Yeah.
And it wasn't able to negotiate one, but it slowed down and let you take over.
It slowed way down to let me know, like, hey, I can't quite do this, but you got to take over, and I'm at a safe speed for you to do so.
Yeah.
So I think I feel pretty confident with the system, close to the confidence I feel with something like autopilot, for example. It really is quite well done.
Yeah, no, I agree. It definitely worked well. And sound system's got a Harman Kardon sound system. I don't know how many speakers?
So 700 watts, 12 speakers, 16 channels. So it's a lot of numbers thrown at you, but it's a great sound system. Oh, we are getting onto a major freeway, so you can test travel assist. But yeah, Harman Kardon is a great brand. I mean, they partner with other manufacturers as well, and it gives you a lot of dynamic control within the EQ, 5-band EQ plus a separate subwoofer adjustment. So we can't comment on the bass sound system per se, but in this car, it sounds great.
And also, it has the smart glass roof, which I really like. I love this one. Any of the views, turn it on, turn it off. So it has the electrochrome glass roof. So at the swipe of a button, or you can use the voice assistant, and it will change the glass from clear to opaque. And it works really well. I love that. I wish one of my cars had it.
I wish every car had it. I first experienced it in the Toyota Venza, and then the Taycan, and now this is getting it. And I hope all glass roof cars go that direction. I think it's a fun party trick, but it actually is functional as well.
Yeah, no, I definitely missed not having that. I loved it on the Taycan. I think it was the first time I really played with it a lot. It's an option on GTS, but that was the first vehicle that I played with it on. That vehicle has it in 9 different sections. Yeah. So you can kind of open half of it, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. It's the whole panoramic roof is either clear or opaque, but I really like it. I think it works really well. Okay, so next up, we're going to check out the DC fast charging characteristics of the ID.7. This isn't part of the official media drive. Volkswagen didn't account for us stopping in DC fast charging, but we did some research and we found a DC fast charger that's not far off of our route. So we're going to vary from the pre-programmed route a little bit and see if we can get the DC fast charger to turn on. We don't have any type of network card or anything. Hopefully it just accepts a credit card. Yeah, we'll see if we can get some ID.7 DC fast charging on the way.
Sounds good.
As for charging, on AC, the ID.7 has the same 11 kilowatt onboard charger as the ID.4. And with the 77 kilowatt hour battery pack, the ID.7 will fully recharge from completely dead to 100% in about 8.5 hours. Now, once the larger battery pack, the 86 kilowatt hour battery pack, is available, it's going to retain the same 11 kilowatt onboard charger. It'll take about another hour to fully recharge. That's AC charging. When it comes to DC fast charging, which we're here to do right now, the standard battery, 77 kilowatt hour battery, will peak at 175 kilowatts, and the vehicle will charge from 20 to 80% in about 29 minutes. Now, the larger pack, the 86 kilowatt hour battery pack, will be able to accept up to 200 kilowatts, and it'll actually charge faster from 20% to 80%, even though the battery's bigger than the smaller battery pack because of the higher charging rate. That'll charge from 20% to 80% in about 25 minutes, which is respectable for long road trips. So now we're going to plug this guy in here and see how well she performs. Another thing I noticed is I really like this charge port flap. You notice it opens up. Most charge port flaps open to the side, and this gives some protection from the elements when your connector is plugged in there. So I actually like this. That's a cool design. Let me remove the DC fast charge tab. And plug in the CCS2 connector. Now we're in France here today on this media drive event, so they use CCS2. And when the vehicle launches in the US, it's going to have CCS1 as your DC fast charging connector. Volkswagen's one of the last companies to come out and say they're going to transition to the North American Charging Standard, or NACS. But trust me, they're going to eventually. So the vehicle's definitely going to launch with CCS1, hopefully within a year or so, or by 2025, when most of the automakers are making that transition. Volkswagen will eventually come on board and use the North American Charging Standard. But when this vehicle does launch in the summer of 2024, it's going to be equipped with a CCS1 inlet and J1772 for AC charging. Okay, so we plugged in at 45% state of charge, so we're not expecting to get the maximum charging rate that the ID.7 can accept. But I want to see how long it takes to add 30% of the battery starting at 45%. So when we plugged in, we were actually at 44% state of charge. I had thought we were at 45%. And the ID.7 immediately jumped up over 100 kilowatts, and after 18 seconds was taking in 121 kilowatt. However, that didn't last long, and it immediately started slowly lowering the charging rate. After 5 minutes of charging, we had added 13% of the battery, and we're at 57% state of charge. But now the charging rate had dropped below 100 kilowatt. 5 minutes later, at the 10-minute mark, we had added 21% of the battery and we're at 65% state of charge, and the ID.7 was now accepting 91 kilowatt. After 15 minutes of charging, which is really what I wanted to test, I wanted to see how much we could add in 15 minutes, the ID.7 was at 75% state of charge, adding 31% of the battery, which should be good for about 100 miles of driving, and the vehicle was now taking in 76 kilowatt. I did stop recording at that point, but I didn't unplug the vehicle as Jordon and I were trying to figure out if there was any way to access a better display screen than the one we had, because it had very limited information. And we did figure out how to do that, and we ended up unplugging after 20 minutes when the ID.7 was at 82% state of charge. Now I know the screen here says 81%, but it changed to 82% just after I shut off the camera and ended the charging session. All right, well, we're back on the highway. Pretty successful DC fast charging adventure as far as I'm concerned. We figured out how to get it working, although Jordon had to help. The first station we were on, we couldn't get it to accept my credit card. Yeah. And I just kept trying to make it accept a credit card, and Jordon was like, maybe this station isn't working, and walked over to the next station, and that was like, oop, it'll accept a credit card over here. So we had to move over. So the US isn't the only place that has charging issues. The charger here wasn't functioning either in Europe, and that's unusual because in my experience coming here to Europe, all the chargers seem to always work. Yeah, but
most of my experience too. But you know, I had that conditioned brain from the US of, well, what if it doesn't work? And
I wasn't. I was just like, I'm gonna make this one. It must be me. I'm doing something wrong. But it wasn't. It was the charger. It didn't work. But we moved over, got the other one to work, and we did plug in at 45% state of charge, which is relatively high when you're going to use a DC fast charger. You kind of want to get in there when it's at a low state of charge to really test the DC fast charging, which this vehicle here has a peak charging rate of 175 kilowatts. We saw around 120-ish for a short period of time, and we were able to go from 45% to 82% in 20 minutes. So, you know, that was pretty good. We, you know, starting at a high state of charge, to add that much battery in 20 minutes bodes well for the ID.7 on road trips. And the larger battery, when that becomes available, is going to charge even faster. So that's going to have a peak charge rate of 200 kilowatts. So it should do even better on the DC fast charger. Okay, well, that's pretty much it for my driving impressions. To sum it up, I'm really impressed with the ID.7. This is an extremely comfortable vehicle. It's quiet. It allows you to adjust suspension to your liking. The seats are very comfortable, and as I mentioned, standard heating and cooling, standard massaging seats. This is the kind of vehicle I want to sit in on a super long road trip. I would easily, you know, take this on a 1,000-mile road trip and not even think twice about it. Yeah. Super comfortable, and I think it's going to hit the right spot for consumers in the US, at least those that are willing to buy sedans. Sedans do take up a very small segment of the US car sales, but supposedly they're kind of making a comeback. That's what I've been reading, that more and more people have been interested in buying sedans. And this would definitely be one that I would consider. It's got a lot of room. It doesn't have a frunk, which I still don't get that, why the German brands, many of them just refuse to give customers frunks. Might be because of the MEB platform just can't support it. I'm not 100% sure of that, but it seems like the way they have it engineered, they just can't put a frunk up front. But it's for such a big vehicle, there should be some additional storage space up there. But the storage space in the back is big. It's with the seats down, it's really long. So I think that's not going to be an issue. It's more of like the principle of it with an electric car. Like, give us a frunk, even if it's a small frunk for our charging cables and maybe an extension cord and some small emergency items to put up there. Yeah. And that way you don't have to put that stuff in the back. It seems like a self-inflicted wound to not put a small frunk up front, and hopefully at some point Volkswagen will start adding them to their vehicles, but they currently don't, as they don't have one pedal driving. You know, it's you do get the B mode that you get on the Volkswagen ID.4. You have drive and then drive B mode. The B mode is more aggressive regenerative braking, but it still doesn't do one pedal. You can't roll to a stop and have the vehicle hold it. I just don't get why they won't offer that. If they think most of their customers don't want it, give it to us and put it in a setting that we can turn off if we don't want. Exactly. But just to say no, you don't need this, you don't want this, and we're not going to include it is just disappointing to me. A lot of electric vehicle owners want that one pedal driving experience, and you just don't get it with Volkswagen, not on any of their vehicles. You know, besides those shortcomings, ID.7's a solid vehicle, and I think it's going to have the range and the charging that customers in the US are going to appreciate and go for. I hope it does well, because it's a darn good car. What do you think, Jordan? Give me your final thoughts on it.
That aligns with it. I mean, I see a lot of ID.4s around the US. They're extremely popular, and I think with good reason. It's proper German engineering, and I say proper kind of with a caveat, because we're like, well, why didn't you engineer it with one pedal driving, or why didn't you engineer a front trunk? And that's what they told me, is they just never engineered the front trunk, and they haven't had enough people complain about it yet. Maybe in Germany, no one's complaining about frunks. In the US, it seems like everyone I talk to, when you show them your EV, and maybe they're from an ICE car, the first thing they want to see is the front trunk, because that's a perk to them of having an EV. So it's funny how that's gone hand in hand. But this is well engineered. I've really enjoyed my time with the ID.4. I've even taken the ID.4 all-wheel drive on some canyon blasts with like very aggressive roads and aggressive speeds, allegedly. And it just does it, even though it wasn't engineered per se to do that. So I'm excited about ID.7. I'm glad it's coming to the US. I think they for sure could have made it and could have just said, you know what, it's a European car because Europeans like sedans more. But they understand the 15% market share of sedans in the US is still a piece of a big pie. And so I'm glad they're bringing this over. Of course, we don't get the wagon version, but oh well. We can just mope around about that a little bit.
Yeah, we're not getting a wagon, you know that. But, unfortunately.
Yeah, but this, as is, we're driving small battery, rear-wheel drive. It's fantastic. I think big battery, all-wheel drive would just be the best thing ever.
No, I agree, and I think the American consumers are going to want that larger battery, you know, because just to give them a little bit more comfort. Most of the people that come into ID.7 are going to be first-time electric vehicle buyers, and just seeing that, say, an EPA range rating of over 300, which isn't confirmed, but we're guessing that, I think that'll make a big difference and make people feel a little bit more comfortable with making that plunge into electric vehicles. It's a little bit closer to the range that they are familiar with their gas vehicles. So I think that's going to be a big deal once that becomes available. And the last thing I want to mention, which I forgot to talk about, this has an amazing turning radius. Yeah. For such a big car. ID.4 does also. I remember the ID.4 has a great turning radius, but maneuverability in tight areas when you're going slow, it's really fantastic. I could almost make a U-turn on a small street. So I don't know exactly what the numbers are for the turning radius. Maybe I'll bring it up on the screen of this video once I get that from Volkswagen, but the turning radius is fantastic.
Yeah, and part of that, so what's interesting is the ID.4 rear-wheel drive does have an incredible turning radius. The all-wheel drive, not quite as good. And I suspect that'll happen with this as well. But because of the way it's packaged with the only having a motor in the rear, they're able to squeeze crazy amounts of turn radius with this car. And you're right, it's impressive, especially because of the long wheelbase sedan that this is.
Yeah, and it does have a long wheelbase, and I think that adds to the comfort, the smoothness, the ride quality is absolutely, as I said before, it was surprising to me. I mean, this drives like a luxury sedan.
Yep.
And good on Volkswagen for being able to achieve that.
Yeah.
Volkswagen has not yet released pricing for the US market for the ID.7. And if you're looking to purchase the vehicle, it's not going to qualify for the federal tax credit for no portion of it. However, due to the loophole in the Inflation Reduction Act's language, I don't know if it's an intentional loophole or not, but it does qualify if you lease it. So that may be the way to go. If you want an ID.7, lease it. You could always lease it and then purchase it at the end of the lease, and then you will get the full $7,500 federal tax credit. Now, the ID.7 is also going to come in a station wagon version, which is incredibly cool. However, we're not going to get that in the US. It's going to be limited to Europe, which is unfortunate. And I talked to Volkswagen representatives about that extensively, and they're pretty adamant that we're not going to get this. I don't think it's one of those things where they're saying no and then you get it later. The fact of the matter is, unfortunately, the US market just does not buy station wagons. We want big SUVs, and automakers do not ship cars here that they don't think they're going to sell. And I think it's a shame, because I think it's a really cool version of the ID.7. Listen, if this is your first time here at State of Charge, please don't forget, smash that subscribe button, ring the notification bell so you don't miss any upcoming electric vehicle news and reviews. And as always, thanks for watching.